And we will move forward to our next segment of the day, the first panel discussion for the day. But once again, we'd like to thank our dignitaries for giving us some pertinent points on how really HR can move beyond its traditional role and positioning HR as a strategic driver of India's global growth by how we can really align skills and leadership with our national missions. Well, we now move forward to the first panel discussion for the day. Well, leadership, ladies and gentlemen, is often imagined as the domain of seasoned veterans, yet history and modern practice reveal a vibrant mosaic where wisdom and innovation coexist across generations. Well, not just that, as workplace evolve, they are becoming more dynamic intersections of multiple generations, each bringing unique strengths, value, and perspectives. So the big question comes here, does leadership have an age? Well, up next, we bring a power-packed panel that will unpack it through the lens of a generational leadership mosaic where each group contributes unique strengths to the leadership landscape. We bring to you the first panel discussion of the day titled Generational Leadership Mosaic, Does Leadership Have an Age? Well, the stage is almost set. That gives me a cue to invite our speakers, but till then urging everyone to stay back with us, stay glued to your seats because we are just getting started, right? It's just the first panel discussion of the day and let's get started. Our panel discussion titled Generational Leadership Mosaic, Does Leadership Have an Age? Well, that question is soon going to be answered with our speakers just about to join us in 30 seconds from now. But I do see some people standing behind. We have a lot of seats this side, so you all can join us at the front seats in case you want to really experience all those conversations up close in person. You all can join us at the front seats and let's get the discussion started. All right, the stage is set. Our first panel discussion of the day, Generational Leadership Mosaic, Does Leadership Have an Age? First up, I'd like to invite our moderator to spearhead this conversation. Put your hands together for Ms. Sonal Jain, Global Chief Human Resources Officer, EPL Limited. Come on everyone, let's give a big round of applause. A very warm welcome, ma'am. Next up joining us is Kinjal Chaudhary, Global President, Human Resources, Karila Pharmaceuticals Limited. Let's put our hands together for Mr. Kinjal Chaudhary joining us. A very warm welcome. Also joining us is Mr. Shantanu Deshpande, Founder, Chief Executive Officer at Bombay Shaving Company. A very warm welcome. Also, please put your hands together. Joining us is Ms. Richa Dubey, Chief People Officer at Nayara Energy Limited. A very warm welcome. Also, put your hands together for Ms. Diksha Sekri, IIT Bombay DRF Development and Relations Foundation, the Associate Vice President there. Let's give a round of applause, everyone. And of course, we'd love to keep this as a two-way conversation. At the end, you all can share your questions with your speakers, and I'm sure they would be more than happy to take them off online. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, and thank you all our panel members. So after such an amazing conversation, the session talks about a couple of things that Puneet alluded, which is about leadership. So, and I have an amazing panel. We have actually created a little bit of a secret. We said we will do everything impromptu. So that's what we're going to do in this conversation. But before that, you know, the conversation is about leadership mosaic. And what is it all about? It's a pattern made by colorful pieces coming together. And if we were to think about it, leadership is all about it. Right? Leadership is all about bringing different styles, different perspectives, and it grows through the years. We all evolve through the years. Right? So I have the privilege to talk about it with my co-panel members. So as workplace evolve, they are becoming dynamic intersections of multiple generations, each bringing unique strengths, values, and perspectives. This session explores how multi-generational leadership shapes decision-making, culture, and innovation, and how organizations can harness this diversity to thrive in a volatile and rapidly changing landscape. So, we're going to cover a few things about leadership transitions, innovation and growth, and future-ready organization led by multi-generational workforce. And I must say, this conversation is not about the workforce. This conversation is about leaders, and leaders being at the center. And hence, what's your style? What's your thinking? What's your perspective? So as I begin, a rapid fire question to each one of you as we begin. Does leadership really have an age? Or have we just been conditioned that it does? So why don't we start with you, Deeksha?
Great question, and thank you for putting me in the spot first. um, I think we see leaders at every age. We have Greta Thunberg, we have Malala becoming leaders as teenagers, global leaders. We have Trump still doing a version of leadership at 70 plus. But I think leadership is defined by our own environment, our value systems, our mentors, and also I think something that we do not always think about is our brain development, right? I was reading a study that says adolescence is now considered to be from 15 years of age to 30 years of age, which means our prefrontal cortex is actually not developed until then. So our leadership style, or anything we do in life for that matter, is defined by a more impulsive nature, risk-taking. We don't, when you're younger, your leadership will always be different. So there are also other studies that say, and also we notice that when we choose leaders, right? We look towards somebody older when we are looking for stability, when we are looking for maintaining the status quo. But when we are looking for change, that's when we turn to the younger leaders, right? So you see startup founders, they start off very young, most of them. You see those stories. And you then know that, okay, that is when you're disrupting something, you are looking for somebody younger. But also this now has become a conditioning, right? Like you're saying, is there an age? It's about now what we are coming to expect of it, right? Earlier we thought leaders are only after you're 50, but now with so many people breaking the norm, it's become normal to be a leader at any age. So I think that conditioning has sort of changed now.
Great. Shantanu?
Hey, first of all, thank you so much, Bala, for having me and to be on this panel. It's a privilege to be here. For me, I think the short answer is leadership does not have an age, but it depends on how you define it. Okay, so there are multiple kinds of leadership, and a lot of us have kind of become attuned to making the assumption that the more senior you get as a leader, the larger the number of teams you manage. If you're managing a workforce of 1 lakh people, you're a senior leader. If you have a small team of 3 people, you're a junior leader. And as you get promoted, your team has to increase and so on. I think that's one mindset that we all have, including myself. But that's not how, as I have evolved, and I run my own company, is that there are multiple kinds of leadership. One of which is thought leadership. And thought leadership actually does not depend on number of people you manage. It depends on how evolved your thought is to the context you're working in. And to take examples of, which Diksha spoke about, for example, Bhagat Singh was a thought leader at 21, 22, right? But he did not have to mobilize a large number of people. But if you have to mobilize a large number of people and create followers and create followership amongst other leaders, then a certain age actually is important, because you're able to then, your experience is able to do pattern recognition, you're able to relate to a lot more people's contexts. So people make fun of it with gray hair and this and that. But if you're a 50-year-old person, it's likely that you will have a higher empathy to a human being compared to when you're 21, 22. So it depends on how you define leadership and the context of it. If it's a thought leader, like we just saw someone at the age of 14 or 15, like doing path-breaking work in quantum mechanics very recently, that thought leadership does not require an age. In fact, the earlier the better, because you're sharper. But if it is about followership and empathy and mobilization of large number of people, then age, I think, plays a very big role. I've gotten better as I've gotten older, so I guess maybe age does play a role.
Great. What do you think?
So this question is a very intriguing one. Every time I think of it, there are so many thoughts that cross our mind, and myself as a leader, how I have seen myself evolving over time. But if you ask me really, does leadership have an age? Since Taj is the flavor of the day, I'll repeat a story which I heard from one of my friends who worked with the Taj after the attack. And he shared a story of a young 21 years old intern who took charge of a room during the attack where very senior business leaders of a particular organization had assembled. And she said she got up on the stage in the front of after the attack has happened, and there were, you could hear the bullets all over and the chaos in the hotel. She took charge, a 21 years old intern with 50 plus, senior leaders, all the 50 plus age group, they were in that room. And she said, I am the in charge at this time, and I'll tell you how to manage yourself during this attack. So of course, she managed the security arrangements. She ensured that there is food and temporary toilet provided to people in the room. And she took care of them for at least 12 to 18 hours, and all of them were saved gradually. And I'm sure my friends from the Taj group could, talk more about it. But this story just shows so many things which a leadership requires. And a few things which I sincerely believe is in the conviction that yes, I can do it. The whole character of a person comes out when you take charge in such situations or wherever in life. There's a lot of action bias. Taking charge means also I'll act on it. And overall, I think it's a power of visualizing, saying that, yes, I can make it happen. So for me, as a leader who have evolved over time, the examples that I have seen around, and this story, if I sum it up, I don't think age is any time a number. All of us, post-retirement today, I think are evolving into very different kind of leaders and still running the show in different ways and contributing to the society. Young people are getting, I think they're growing up very fast because of the exposure they have, and we have corporate leaders who start joining the entrepreneurship group by the age of 14, 15. So the whole range has just widened. We don't need to read at age. We don't need to look at education. I don't think even we need to look at exposure. But all these few characters that I spoke about, conviction, courage, have the ability to take it ahead and go and do it. I think you are welcome to be a leader at any age, at any field you want to be.
Thank you. Kinjal?
Thank you. I think everything has been said, so I have very little to add, and that saves me the trouble of speaking too much. I think I agree with all the panel members who have spoken, particularly Shantanu. I don't think age is a function of how much hair is left on your head or how much of it is black. I think it's very much, it's agnostic of age or agnostic of, it just depends on the skills, the competencies that one brings to the table. There are people in HR, and I'll particularly focus on HR, who bring a lot of leadership despite not being in the core operating function. They can assume a lot of leadership role because of not the crown that they are wearing, but because of the competencies and the skills that they bring to the table. So I think it's more a function of those competencies, which is, I think, has been said it all, but I will still repeat the emotional intelligence being the most important one, ability to connect with others, interpersonal skills. These are the things which are agnostic of age. And people with very less hair also may not have it. People much younger can have lots and lots of it. So I think that's pretty much it.
That's interesting. So does leadership at scale, leadership expansion, it's all about thought process. So Shantanu, why don't I ask you about your perspective on, have you encountered a bias that leadership must look a certain age? If you did, how did you break that narrative?
No, I think, of course, I think biases exist for a reason, and they're also earned for a reason, right? And so I started my company when I was 27 years old, right? So for me to, And one of our first employees was almost 67, 68 years old. So, like you were saying, he joined us post-retirement after a 40-year career because he was still super energetic and super, driven to do something, and he felt like this young startup is a cool place to be. So that dynamic was interesting, right? A 27, 28-year-old founder and a 67, 68-year-old veteran. I still call him sir. He still works with us, by the way. And I still call him sir. And I do feel like, as at least personally, so for those who, let me just introduce myself. I graduated from business school. At the age of 23, I joined McKinsey. And at McKinsey, I was basically serving clients who were much senior to me, whose children were my age, right? So I had to be like a peer to them. It was a strange, but very rewarding and character building career. And after 5 years there, I started my company at 27, 28, and then I kind of have built out, and I'm now 38 years old. At different points in time, in different contexts, I think leadership with age versus without age has mattered. So, for example, when I was starting out, I got the benefit of having a young age. That you're an entrepreneur, you're young, you don't have baggage, you have so much energy, we love your thought leadership, you want to be a disruptor, you want to break monopolies, you want to do something that is uncharted, we will back that kind of leadership. So I used age to my advantage when I was raising capital, hiring people, setting up the office and so on. But as I have gotten older and as the company has become bigger, there is a certain element of maturity that I have had to kind of build myself to be the leader that my company needs me to be. And I play the role today I play three roles today. One is that of a founder, the second is that of a CEO, the third is that of a shareholder. And as a founder, I don't think that leadership requires any age. In fact, the younger the better. To be young, be disruptive, break things, try to do things that everyone thinks is impossible. Don't be jaded by the world. So there's a disruptive leadership I need, and that's the bias I have to bring to the company. The CEO leadership actually requires me to be a lot more mature, a lot more thoughtful. I cannot just have knee-jerk reactions. I have to be conscious about allocation of people, allocation of capital. Bala sits on my board, so he possibly sees that side of me, hopefully more good than bad. And then the shareholder side of the leadership is where I have to actually think about the company in a much bigger way, and think about how capital gets returned and how people create wealth for themselves and so on. I feel like at different contexts, in different situations, in different meetings with different people, I have to choose which hat to wear. And for me, that's a damn hard thing to do. And I think all of us possibly do that in very, very different ways. And we don't recognize it because we have become so adept at switching hats and switching contexts and not realizing it. But I think you need to be a different kind of leader depending upon the kind of person, the kind of room, the kind of context, and the kind of outcome you expect from an interaction. So I think leadership has an age, but it is not the age you are. It is the age you decide to be. And I think that's the distinction that's important.
Wow, you said leader that your company needs to be. So great. Richa, how do leaders from different generations lead organizations and shape culture differently?
So, what is culture? Questions goes there. So for me, culture is like the air that you breathe every day. And how do leaders contribute to it? Leaders contribute to it in many ways. And from what I have seen and observed is, first of all, it starts from thought itself. What kind of a place you want to be, what kind of place you want to create, what kind of a situation or experience you want to provide to the people who work with you. And then that gradually translates into the values that you carry. No matter how big you grow, if the values are not ingrained deeply, and that too, values like very old-fashioned value, but most important, integrity, ethics, trust, the core values. If they are fumbled anywhere by a leader, the organization at the end has to go down the drain, no matter how big it is. And then comes the systems, processes, the way we operate, because that is actually the conversion of thoughts into how you want to really operate, how people are going to experience you. So for me, these three things are very important. And leaders of any age, from the ancient era till the future, today's leaders of any generation, young, mid-aged, or old, I think the core never changes. So the belief in yourself, the way you are looking at translating these values into real life is what a leader has to do. And that's how I look at it.
So core never changes, and that's what Puneet also spoke about, saying across multiple businesses, how do we ensure that a core remains still the same? So that's what I take back from what you said. Diksha, how does your leadership style uniquely shapes the outcomes that you want to drive?
So when I saw the question you sent to me, I was first I was very excited by the question. I said, yes, my personal style, visionary, democratic, empathetic, servant leader, all those wonderful things. And then as I started thinking deeper, reality started setting in that I'm not a founder, right? I do not define the culture at my organization. I am a mid-level leader. So for me, my leadership style is also determined by what my bosses are expecting from me, my managers, and what my teams are expecting from me as well. So when I started, my first taste of leadership was when I was 30. I became GM at CRI with the large team, and I was very soft, right? I was because I was a very I just went into the development sector, and I wanted to be seen as very empathetic and extremely likable. And I think as a woman, there is that extra baggage that I want to be more likable than the my male counterparts. So at that time, I was very soft, and but I got a lot of amazing directors there who helped me to come out of my shell and really start speaking up. And they would send me on to panel discussions and, no, you need to start speaking. Cut to I decided, okay, now I'm going to be an assertive leader. And the very next job I went to, it was an anti-child sex trafficking organization. And two of my team members were actually survivors of trafficking. Now, all my assertiveness went down the drain, and I became even softer, more empathy than you could imagine. Because, see, when we are in normal situations, we don't know exactly what our teammates are going through. But here, I was working with two girls whose trauma was out for all of us to see. So at no point could I feel that I could be anything but empathetic, right? So there, my leadership changed. Of course, eventually, as I started working more with women empowerment, etc., I started getting my voice back. But what I notice now, and it's based, like I joke with my friends of my character journey, right? What's the next arc? My bosses or my seniors, if you look at anybody, middle level millennial manager, right, like me, we'll have our bosses who will be Gen Xers or boomers who have a very different work ethic, that we work 7 days a week and everything has to be done, etc., etc. But the teams that I have are now Gen Z, who are like work-life balance, ma'am, we will not work after 8 o'clock, and oh, you work till 10 o'clock, next day to chutti honi chahiye. So, like as every generation says, we are the most pisawa generation. I will also say it, most pisawa, because we have these expectations from our bosses, and also we are trying to balance it out with looking woke enough, even though I am pretty woke, I would like to think so. But at the end of the day, as we age, right, a wisdom comes in that, okay, work-life balance can only take the company so far. Work-life balance will not make sure that I meet my targets, hence the profitability will be low, hence our salaries will not increase, or they may also be a job loss, right? So that kind of wisdom has now set in with edge, and I think personal leadership has. I'm still confused. Like, what should the answer to this question be? But I'm hoping to have an answer by next year.
Great. Thank you so much for your authentic and honest answer. Kinjal, where do generational leadership differences hit decision making the hardest? And decision making, being faster, being slow is the most talked about topic in any organization, right? If you ask anybody, everybody will say somebody is not making the decision, right? How many of you would agree? I've always felt, in all the surveys, conversation, everybody said somebody else is not making the decision. So, the question to you is, how do you accelerate or slow down speed? And does leadership age play a part?
Okay. Let me answer this with my experience. In my organization, I have people of various generations, from baby boomers all the way to Gen Z. And the decision-making styles, or more importantly, how they come to a conclusion on any particular topic, is very different. And the course of action that they choose is very different. This is my experience from what I have seen working with people across generations. So a baby boomer would probably, or even to a large extent my generation, which is Gen X, would probably be more in terms of deliberating a particular thing, talking to few people, then coming to a conclusion, and then come to a decision, and then acting on it. Most of us, not everybody, we can't generalize for any generation for sure. A Gen Z, on the other hand, may not like to consult too many people, may have an app for everything, and kind of come to a decision based on what the technology recommends and go with that blindly without consulting others. Now, one leads to a faster decision, but it leads to less consultative process. Therefore, execution and sustenance of the decision can become a challenge. The other one is where it is a more consultative, and therefore there is a greater buy-in and more people are onboarded on that decision. But the flip side is that it takes a longer time to have that decision in place. To strike a right balance is the best thing, of course, it goes without saying. And for that, what we are doing consciously is that, we put people of different generations in the same team. So in any problem solving, if any kind of business decision has to be taken, we put not a cross-functional team, but a cross-generational team, which kind of brings in the best of all possible worlds, so that one, the decision making is faster. Second, the decision making is widely researched, not just basing it on institutional knowledge or wisdom, but also going across other organizations and industries. And third, we have a greater buy-in, so that makes the decision making more sustainable, and the implementation which can last longer. So that's a process that we are following, and that's where we have faced challenges. I hope I have answered the question.
Yeah. So what you're saying is it does have an age, and age does play a role. A rapid fire question to all of you, and then would love to hear audience question. As the volatility increases, which leadership trait from any generation will matter the most for the next decade? Yeah?
I think empathy, hands down, because if you're not able to understand or even think about what another person is going through, be it any generation, and be it your customer, be it anyone, right? If you don't understand that, then you can't really lead at all. So, yeah, that's.
I would actually, I think the ability to have original thought and the ability to think through a context, a problem, a situation, multiple points of view, the barrage of social media, and be objective about your values in a decision-making context, of any kind, I think is so critical right now. I cannot begin to tell you how confused I constantly feel. I'm constantly confused, politically, economically, socially, mentally, physically. I'm constantly confused because there's just so much inflow of information. And for me to have an original thought process is getting increasingly harder because I'm constantly influenced by so much that is happening in the world. And I don't think we realize it, by the way. I don't think we realize it until it deteriorates to a point where we have just become robotic pawns of the world that wants us to behave a particular way. And so in leadership, I think empathy can be manufactured and manipulated completely, by the way. Completely. If we are not original in our thinking. So I agree with Diksha in the sense that you have to understand, but in what way? So I would strongly recommend just reduced screen time, surround yourself with actual conversations, with actual original thinkers and people who have a point of view, and build that muscle and rebuild that muscle over and over, because I think we have all lost it. We have all lost the ability to think originally, and that's very important.
Wow, so empathy, think originally. What would you say, Richa?
Just build up on what Shantanu said, that yes, think original and the learning agility, because the way knowledge is just snowballing every day. Every day something new, and the same thing has so many perspective, variety, and all generation is impacted by it. Everybody is impacted by it. In this context, do you have the learning agility to pick up the right things and learn and still be filter the information and use it for the benefit of yourself and for the organization for which you are working or the cause that you're working for? So that is very important for me. And another thing which I feel, again, a very old-fashioned thing, but it never goes out of fashion, is putting people first as a leader. So one is learning agility and second is putting people first. Because no matter what you do, how much you automate things, how much technology takes over our life, people and that edge that good people bring to an organization, to a setup, to a team, is just non-compromisable. And people remain the pivot of any good action or thought. So how do you use your learning ability along with people first are the two things I would prioritize.
Thank you.
I'll say ability to see round the corner and adapt oneself to it. With the rate of change and the pace at which things are changing around us, one competence, one skill which will be required irrespective of generation is ability to see what is coming and ability to adapt oneself to that change.
Thank you so much. And when we were choosing the topic, we said it is about leadership, leading boldly. And hence, what do leaders think? What do they believe? How are they evolving their own perspectives? Because, we all are expecting so many things from the leaders. Some of you spoke about expectation of your managers, your expectation of shareholders, your expectation of your teams, expectation of your own self. And hence we said, how do you lead boldly in the leadership mosaic that you have built for yourself and for your organization? And every single person in this room is a leader. You are a leader and you deal and you lead with leaders in your organizations. And hence, how do we reduce our judgment? Because like some of our panel members so authentically said, it's confusing and it's reality because we are overburdened with leadership sometimes. And hence, leading boldly is always not about complexity. It's about simplicity. And that's what a lot of our panel members spoke about, which is something so human. And that humanness will not change even in the next horizon, which is the theme of our conclave. So it's going to stay the same. So thank you so much.